disclaimer. The views of the guest and even the host sometimes are not necessarily the views of the Work With Me podcast and Ruse advisors.
Welcome.
Work. The interview. Preparing for the interview. Picking your final candidate. Going over the offer. On-board training. Being let go. All things work-related from the employee and employer side are fair game here at the Work With Me podcast. Interact with us at workwithmepodcast.com. Email us at bob@ruseadvisors.com or Larindy at ruseadvisors.com. Your tough boss is Larindy Ruse. Your slacking employee is Bob Stei. And the fun starts now. As David Letterman used to say, my oh my, we're having some fun now. How you doing, everybody? Welcome. Bob Stei, Larindy Ruse, the whole gang's here to Work With Me podcast. 1023 HD2 KKNH, where classic rock lives. WorkWithMePodcast.com. and tickradio.com. Tick Radio and KKNH run this show from 6 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday. So you basically get 4 different shows to listen to. You get the new one, and I picked 3 other ones you're going to like. And we're going to have a few new affiliates coming very, very soon. One of them I'm practically have the dotted line signed. So exciting times for the Work With Me podcast. Hey, reach out to us, Bob at ruseadvisors.com, Larindy at ruseadvisors.com. Big thanks to Eleni Pharmacist. She was a wonderful guest last week, and our new tradition of bringing smart women to the show week after week, Tavia Sharp is going to be joining us. Now, Tavia Sharp works with people, mainly men, and teaches them a lot of things, including dress to success. Something I failed at years ago. So my wife's been pushing me to talk to this woman, so we're going to find out a lot about Tavia. She's from Delaware. And in a few days, our president-elect may be from Delaware. So get a lot to talk to her about. And once again, Bob at ruseadvisors.com, Larindy at ruseadvisors.com, 1023 HD2, KKNH, where classic rock lives, tickradio.com, workwithmepodcast.com. So we're going to talk fashion and a whole bunch of other things with her. So I started to think, and these 2 stories aren't really mine, though. They're other people's stories from coworkers. We live in a weird time right now where, because I'm into it, we're very casual right now, especially me. And I've been working remotely for 9 years now. So unless I have to go somewhere, which is rare, I'm as casual as they get because I'm comfortable. And I feel I never bought into that. Well, if we dress up, we're going to work harder. No, I like to be comfortable. But we're in a weird place right now where sometimes people need to get out and make a business visit somewhere or go to an office, and they don't know how to dress anymore because they're so used to being comfortable at home. My first recruiting job, the funny farm as I call it, and I'm gathering all the stories from my time there because there are too many. Actually, I think I'm going to book a friend of mine from the Funny Farm who started a very successful business afterwards and go over some of the stories. But one of my favorite stories there is we recruited pharmaceutical sales reps. And basically, they look like the perfect little college sorority fraternity student. They've got their nice suit on, they have their little bag with them, and they know how to dress. So a colleague of mine there had a guy who did an interview in, Indianapolis, and they liked the guy. So they wanted him to go to the corporate office in Chicago and meet with them. So I don't know what got in his head, but instead of wearing his suit to meet with the big boss, he drove from, Indianapolis to Chicago. I guess it's a few hours. But he didn't wear a suit. He wore a denim shirt. What is he, Jay Leno? So they saw him, and it was strike 3. This guy had the job, and that screwed it up for me. And then I know a guy I worked with who recently had a Canadian client, and the woman was going for a job. I believe it was an accountant or a bookkeeper job at an attorney's place. So she went in there, and she wore a freaking tank top. So they looked at her and basically were like, strike three. And he had to call her and say, why were you wearing a tank top? She goes, I was just being comfortable. I was being me. No. So I guess we all got to realize how to dress when we're not at home and when we're not in front of the computer. I guess technically how to dress when we're on Zoom. So we're going to talk about that with Tavia. This is the Work With Me podcast at workwithmepodcast.com. 1023 HD2 KKNH, where classic rock lives, and TinkRadio.com. And let's bring Tavia on.
This is the Work With Me podcast at workwithmepodcast.com.
Bob, I'm excited to have Tavia Sharp with us today. And Tavia is a speaker, image consultant, coach, and she's a men's style expert. And we don't have enough of those on the planet. So Tavia, thank goodness you answered the call. So as the founder and CEO of Stei Sharp, Tavia focuses on image and brand consulting for individuals and companies, facilitating professional workshops, as well as private one-to-one and group coaching programs. Tavia is a veteran in this industry. She brings 20 plus years of corporate experience, working for some of the top brands in fashion. You might know a few of these names, Bob, so pay attention. Calvin Klein, Macy's, Nautica. And throughout her background, including her travels to more than 45 countries, there's a story in there we must talk about, Tavia. She brings a high level of multicultural experience to her webinars and workshops. She's also a certified corporate consultant and speaker. And in this work, Tavia conveys valuable and relevant information that address with impact and influence. So I know our listeners would love a few tips. Hopefully you'll be able to give some to us today, Tavia. So welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
Yes, we're so excited to have you on. This is the Work With Me podcast. And we're glad that you're going to work with our listeners today, Tavia, on giving some insights on how they can show up with a sharper image. So Tavia, let's talk about your upbringing to start with. And also maybe you can show us the journey to your arrival at the University of Delaware. I know Bob is connected to that region of the country. So let's please tell more.
Yes, I grew up in the very small state of Delaware. And so I ended up, just really having a love of fashion. And when I was younger, I used to play with my Barbie dolls, and I didn't like the clothes they came with. So I ended up making my own. I didn't even have, play with my Barbie dolls, and I didn't like the clothes they came with. So I ended up making my own. I didn't even know how to sew back then, but I just hand sewed new clothes for my Barbie dolls. And I'd always tell my mom, pick out her clothes for work, pick out my dad's clothes for work. So I had that fashion instinct. I was very creative. I was always drawing and things like that. So I knew I had the creative bug, and I love fashion because to me, once I opened up those fashion magazines, I was like, wow, you could just become something else, just by dressing a certain way. And how amazing is that feeling, when you show up and you feel really empowered by what you wear. So I was always fascinated by that. And I ended up choosing to become a fashion designer. In high school, I knew that I was going to go into fashion, and I ended up going to the University of Delaware because it's where I grew up, and they have a good program, fashion design and merchandising. Studied a semester abroad in Paris and fell in love with Paris, and I'd taken French, in high school. So I've always had this, passion for fashion. And so I knew I was going to move to New York. This is where it's at, right? So as soon as I graduated, I luckily found a job with a company that maybe you guys might have heard of, but it's called Bugle Boy. I don't know, many people listening might know that brand or not, but it was my very, very first job in the fashion industry because a friend of mine worked there and she got my foot in the door. And then from there, at 23 years old, I became an assistant designer pretty quickly, and I was shipped out to China, working in the factory, designing the clothes and bringing back samples. It was crazy. So I was young, gotten to travel, to Europe and things like that before, but then at 23, I was going to Asia. So I was young, gotten to travel, to Europe and things like that before, but then at 23, I was going to Asia, so I've been to Hong Kong and all over Asia for work and also for fun, for pleasure. I love to travel. And here I am, fast forward, I'm doing what I love. So
That's incredible. I didn't realize so many great things came out of Delaware. I thought it was just a state that, and there must just be this large building where everyone processes their corporate entities.
yeah.
So it's beautiful that beautiful things besides corporate entities can come out of Delaware. So I want to talk a little bit more. I love what you talked about, that you can become anything that you want to be. And part of that is, I believe for me, I see that what we wear and how we present ourselves is a reflection of. So would you talk a little bit more about how that has played into your diverse career? And then you can maybe also tell us a little bit about, how did the swimwear company play into all of that? How does one show up in a way, and why was a swimwear company important for you?
So it's interesting because one of my very first jobs, I thought, you know what, I have this opportunity to get a job at a brand that I really admired, and it was a very well-known brand. And I thought, how am I going to show up in a way that tells them I want this job? And so I really thought about what I was going to wear to the interview, because I wanted to show them, like, I know what I'm doing, I'm a good fit, but also I care enough to put in like an effort and make myself stand out, besides my credentials, right? Besides knowing that I'm a good designer, how can I prove that I'm the right person for this? I got that job and I asked my boss, what made you choose me? Because fashion is very competitive. What made you choose me? Like, why me? And he said, well, there were a couple of reasons, but one of the things that he said was because of what you wore to the interview. He said it made that much of an impact. It communicated enough to him that said, you know what, she just got that extra something, right? And that's what I always think about when I work with my clients, is like, you know what, you just want that extra something that shows them that you are the right person, you are the right fit, and they need to choose you. You're not just because of your credentials, right? So the reason why I started my own swimwear company is because I've been working in fashion for, a long time. And I was working at Macy's and I was designing some of their private label brands. And I just felt like I lost my creative edge, and I wanted to create a brand from scratch. And I got inspired by a trip to create a brand from scratch. And I got inspired by a trip to Brazil, one of my many places I visited. And I thought, I just love the whole feeling and the whole vibe. And I wanted to kind of bring that in. And swimwear is such a fun thing to design. I actually designed swimwear when I was at Nautica, one of the things that I designed there. And I just love, that feeling that, like you can just go on an adventure, or it kind of takes you to a new place, right? And it's very tropical and people love those kind of vacations. And I thought swimwear is such a fun thing. So my business partner and I, we were on a trip to Brazil together and we got inspired. We said, what if we created a cool swimwear line that brought this energy and this vibe to the US, and make a New York brand that's Brazilian inspired. And that's what we did. We started from the ground up and we created a line and sold it in Anthropologie's Urban Outfitters. We were in Elle magazines, illustrated. Chrissy Teigen wore my swimsuit. I mean, did it for 5 years. It was a great experience. So that was my first bug that I got bit, being an entrepreneur. And so I really enjoyed being a business owner and creating a brand from scratch.
And now you're a business owner of a slightly different sort. You do life coaching, workshops. Tell us exactly how you've been able to bring and synthesize your understanding of fashion design and that physical representation of who one is, and how you've been able to incorporate that into coaching.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just think of us all, we are unique and different, and all of us are a brand, whether we like it or not, or know it or not. We're all a brand, and we need to start really seeing ourselves that way. And so how do you create a brand for yourself, and image, right? How you show up in this virtual world is a way to do that, is a way for you to stand out and be unique. And most people that I speak to, that's what they really, really want. Do you want to blend in? Not really. I mean, you want to get promoted. You want to be seen as a leader. You want to be that business owner that they choose over your competition. This is a way to create your brand. So I use my experience from the fashion industry. I use my experience doing years of personal development work. And I really bring those two together and help package people and create their own brand image so that they can, crush their goals and go out there and really make an impact.
So Tavia, maybe you could give us a couple of examples of how one may understand intrinsically who they are and they have a certain image that they want to portray, or a way that they want intrinsically who they are and they have a certain image that they want to portray, or a way that they want to be perceived in the world, but there may be some missing, there may be a gap between here's who I am and how I want people to experience me, and a very different representation with what, not just what they wear, but the image that they present and how they hold themselves and so forth. So what are a couple tips or things that people should be considering to begin to help them bridge that gap?
Yeah, you need to ask yourself some questions. It is, how do you want to be perceived in the world? And even what are those words that come to mind that are, I call them, those power words that when you think of how you want to be seen or how you want to show up, what are those words that come to mind? Is it smart, powerful, attractive, confident, successful, whatever, find what those things are. And also ask people in your life, do they see you as that? Or are you a true representation? Or is there a mismatch, because that could be the way that you think you're being seen, but it's actually not how people see you. So I think you need to really get clear on how you want to be seen. And then it's really allowing yourself to step into that fully. And I think one way to do that is what I teach, which is to actually look the part, dress the part. And then guess what? Your energy changes and you can actually feel, okay, this is me. And it's really authentic when that happens. So, what I teach is a tool to help you step into that person, that 2.0 version of yourself, and really embody it instead of thinking, oh, that's what I want, like it's some farther away thing that doesn't feel like achievable. This allows you to really step into that person by dressing that way. And there are things that you can wear, which is some of the things that I teach on how to actually embody those power words, through colors, through silhouettes, style, certain details that show your personality, accessories, things like that, right? That really speak before you do. And that's really powerful.
I really appreciate what you said about awareness and becoming aware of what you want and but where you currently are, and then also seeking input from others. And I think that's where you can come in so powerfully, is to be able to see things from a different perspective and be able to be a good mirror for them, to be able to see, this is what you're saying, and here's also how we're experiencing you from an outside perspective, and then giving them the courage to step into it. So this work must be so rewarding for you.
It is. I love to see the transformation happen. And what I always say is that there are so many things that you can do to get that type of transformation, right? But what we do together is really, really fast. Like it can happen so quickly. It could be like one day and the next day, like, so it's fun to see that it can happen really super fast,
That's compelling, because when we do a lot of coaching, consulting in our business, and the process we go through takes some time. It's not writing a check and dressing differently tomorrow. So this is really inspiring. So Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you and we can talk more about Tavia and how she arrived at her image and style.
Podcast at workwithmepodcast.com, 1023 HD2 KKNH where classic rock lives, and tickradio.com, and that's tick with a C, people, not a K with a C. This is one of the first times where I prepared 3 questions, and as she started talking, I scratched them all off because I had all these new things I wanted to talk about. Where do I begin here? First of all, I think it's great what you do, but let's be honest here. I'm a lost cause for you. I mean, I've had the same haircut since 1989. I haven't cut it since Corona, and I've been working remotely now since 2011. So this is the Target sweatshirt I'm comfy in.
Oh, we're thinking of you, Bob, the whole time. I'm sitting here looking at Tavia, and I'm saying,
yeah,
Bob, you might want to consider, and Lorendi, you too. By the way,
I do have a text from my wife here saying, please listen to her. So what about us who've been working remotely so long and we're comfortable that way? Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. I hear this a lot, right? We are comfortable, but guess what? You start getting too comfortable and that's what your life becomes. Comfortable, easy, coasting by, right? It really does impact how you feel, your mood and your mindset. And some people may say, oh, productivity, I've seen and heard mixed things on that. But to me, what I really want to get across is that it impacts your mood and your mindset. And sometimes when we get comfortable, we forget that, right? Because we just are comfortable. But once we actually change and we say, hey, I'm actually going to put on something that makes me feel really powerful today. And we all know what that feels like. We've all worn something where we're like, wow, when I put that on, I feel like $1,000,000. I walk into a room and just command attention and it feels good, right? You feel empowered. And so what if you could feel that? Have to wear some power suit or, dress to the nines. But what I mean is just putting on certain things that shift your mood and shift your energy so that you can really tackle that day with a new mindset. It's like you get your head in the game in a different way when you wear something intentional. And that goes it goes really far because people do see that. I'm doing more Zoom calls than ever now. So even though I'm not going to meet people in person very much, I'm on the Zoom and people notice when I wear something very colorful or interesting. It's always a conversation. And you know what? It impacts people. So we may not just see it. I mean, or feel it sometimes when we are talking to somebody, but they know, they're thinking it.
Right, Tavia, I'm actually thinking, Bob, I just want to comment quickly about probably just a few weeks ago, and I showed up to a call and they noticed that I was dressed differently. And they said, where are you going today? And so I said, oh, I had a webinar that I led this morning, and they said, oh, you look very, polished and ready to go out. So I just rewound in my mind how many calls I had with that client where apparently I wasn't showing up as powerfully, or my image didn't portray that. So it's sometimes we have to be complimented to recognize that the other days I could maybe show up a little more powerfully, just affirming what you just spoke to, Tavia.
It's so true, because it's what I always say. I say people don't always tell you what they're thinking, but they're thinking something. And they don't want to say the not so nice things, but they'll definitely say the nice things. But then to your point, it's like, how many times were they thinking something like, oh, I wish this person, put in a little more effort. You'll always get that feedback, but people are thinking things. So.
See, Tavia, my brain is saying, listen to this woman. But to be honest, my heart is saying, does Bugle Boy make sweats? But anyway. So.
I get it.
Let's talk about your beautiful home state of Delaware, which I have a lot of connection to as well. I grew up about 40 minutes south outside Baltimore. I've lived about 40 minutes north in Philly, and I've worked there 3 times. What town are you from in Delaware, by the way?
Wilmington.
All right, because I've worked in Wilmington, I've worked in Newark, and I've worked in Milford, Delaware.
Okay.
And depending on when people are listening to this and what happens next week, the president-elect may be from your state of Delaware.
I met him when I was about 15, I think, because he lived in this this town that I actually worked at. I worked at like a local, drugstore, like a Walgreens type of place, and I developed film at the film counter. When I'm dating myself now, we actually developed film, and I was 15 and I did that. And yeah, I think they came in, him and his family came in to get some photos or something. They came to that counter, and so I met him and his family, and that was ages ago. Who knew? You think of that stuff like now, and wow, this person could actually be our president. Like,
How was Senator Biden or the Vice President Biden when he met him? Was he nice?
yeah, very nice, very polite. They were all nice.
Did you see the Saturday Night Live skit they did on him last week?
I didn't see it. I heard
Well,
about
Jim Carrey's playing him now.
it. I heard.
And there's this one line about Delaware where Alec Baldwin as Trump accuses him of being rich, and Jim Carrey looks at him and goes, "Me rich? I'm from Delaware. A night out in Delaware is $30."
That's right. I remember
No
that.
sales tax. That's the best part of it.
That was a great.
Sales tax. That's the best part of it.
That was a great. That's
Yeah.
Jim Carrey is owning that role for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, so no, I love Delaware. I have a lot of great things to say about Delaware. And go Blue Hens.
Yes, Blue Hens.
One of my best friends growing up went to your college. I did my first FM broadcast at the old WXDR, so
I know it.
I have a lot of connection there as well. Let's talk about your unique name. Because I wanted to say Tavia, but it's Tavia Sharp. What's the origin of your first name?
Yeah, so my parents wanted to name me something different, and I was supposed to be born on the 8th, and so they looked up names that are under 8, right? And Octavia came up, which means 8th child, and my mom said that's a little too long, and my dad's like, just cut off the Oc and let's name her Tavia, and so that was it. That's my name.
That's classic. That's classic male. If it doesn't work, just
That's my name.
that's classic. That's classic male. If it doesn't work, just cut it off.
Let's simplify this.
Simplify. Bob, are you going to have to edit?
I was
Sorry.
about to say, Lorindy, I could just edit that and make a whole joke out of that. That's a punchline of a lot of jokes right there.
Use your wisdom.
Oh, that's staying in.
Okay.
And your last name, your real name, studio name, fake name, what is it?
Sharp. Yes, Sharp is my real last name. And I've gotten asked that a lot because I think people think because of what I do that I have branded myself that name. But no, that is the name I was born with. So yes, Tavia Sharp.
So I like it. All three of us have a one-syllable last name. I'm the only one who has the fake name here. So
That's true. So you just automatically went that this must be fake because
yeah,
that's what you
every time
did.
I see a one-syllable name, I'm like, they probably got it on the airplane ticket like I did. Here's the big question I have. I've been arguing with people for years about. There's trends, there's fashion, and there's what you look good. And where do you divide the line of what's popular and what looks right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel that I like to talk about style because style is what you create. You create your own sense of style. A lot of people don't know how to do that, but that's what I help them with. And I think trends are, it's just not as important, right? Because you become too trendy and then you kind of become something that you're not. Right? You're just following a trend because somebody else says it's cool. And there's really a lot of bad trends out there, let's be honest. So I think it's more about style and creating your own style as a self-expression, right? Because when it is really a part of you, then that's what you're communicating. And so out there. And so, and fashion just is, I think, just the term to just define what is, what is this industry? Fashion is $1 billion industry, and it's important. We have to wear clothing, and nobody goes out of the house naked, but it's what you do with it that makes it yours, and that's where it is your style.
Well, on this topic, then I'll do a follow-up. What, in your opinion, was the dumbest fashion trends of maybe the last few decades? I graduated high school in 1988. And I'm not sure why we had to triple cuff our jeans every day. And I'm not sure where we made up all that acid wash jean stuff. But I look at my old photos and it's even more shameful than today. When you look back at the last bunch of time, what do you look at and say, no, why? No, no.
Crocs. I just I don't know. I just think they are horrendous. I don't know. I just think they are horrendous.
Crocs.
I get it.
Do you like Crocs, Bob?
Yeah, it's so
I mean,
comfortable.
Must say you-
right?
can
Bob
you-
likes comfort. I can tell. But they're just ugly, Bob. They're ugly. You know.
Oh, but if you put jewels on them, like my aunts did, doesn't that make them better? Because then that was the next thing. It was like they weren't bad enough, but then we had to create accoutrements to go on them to accent them even more.
Yes. I mean, the other one is Ugg boots. I think Ugg boots are just.
Never liked those.
I mean, they stayed trendy for way too long, like really way too long. And you'd see them and people in California were wearing them. I'm like, it's hot here. Why are you wearing Ugg boots? This is not a functional thing for you. You know, it just, they last.
It seemed like it might have been a good idea maybe for that, an adolescent or something for a moment.
Right.
But when you saw adults wearing them as well, I am proud to say Tavia or Uggs. Never.
Good to hear.
I'm getting I got something right.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple more questions before I put my plastic shoes back on, apparently. Speaking of that, one of the silliest fashion trends the last few years, I want your opinion on this. I'm doing the broadcast from the Jersey Shore a few years ago every night, and I get to see what's going on. I know people like to have holes in their jeans, which is fine, but it was getting to the point where there were more holes in jeans, and this girl went on to get on the radio with me, and basically I could see everything. Basically, there was no fabric there, and I looked at her on the air and said, "At this point, why bother wearing pants?" What's your opinion of that?
Well, everyone's listening to you now, Bob,
Right.
because we're suing. And I guess that also was futuristically speaking.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tavia.
No, it's
I
okay.
couldn't help myself.
I just think that those are, I know exactly the pants you're talking about, where there's so many holes in the front that it's like your whole leg is and everything else. So I don't understand these type of trends. I really don't. They become too extreme and they've lasted too long. You still see them. Or I hate to say it, but the pants that are just pulled down too low and you see the guy's underwear.
Never liked that.
I see your butt and your underwear. I just don't think that is a good look. And that trend has really lasted a really long time.
A long time.
You still see it on the subways. I don't understand.
There's a song, "Is It Over Yet?"
Yeah.
It just keeps coming through my mind.
Yeah, no, we don't want to see that.
All right, well, I got you on the topic then, because I'm speaking to a fashion expert here. Here's a debate my wife and I have had since I met her back in 1999. I do not like tattoos. I do not like piercings. She thinks they're cool. Who's right?
Ooh. See, I think that's up to me. That is, it's your self-expression, right? It is. It's a part of you, and it's communicating who you are as a person, as an individual. And I think that they tell a story. So I think that's to each his own. Personally, I think it's not appropriate in all situations, depending on what the job is that you do. You probably want to cover them up or not wear the piercings, but it just depends, right? Some jobs it's totally appropriate. I saw this. I was doing a research because I'm working with a couple of financial firms, financial advisory firms, and I was doing some research, and I found this advertiser who had done an ad, and they took a DJ who had dreadlocks and piercings and tattoos, and they totally transformed his image into a suited up financial advisor. And they basically said, like, think about it before you just go and trust somebody based on how they look, right? Because if somebody showed up saying, "I'm your financial advisor," and they were in the dreadlocks and the tattoo, that person would have been like, "Who are you? I'm not giving you my money." But because they cut his hair, they put him in the suit, they cleaned him up, it was like automatic. His image was of trust and credibility. So it was really interesting to see how much we communicate visually, and we don't even realize that we automatically trust or don't trust somebody based on how they look. It's true.
And then one more question before I hand it back to Larindy on a totally different note. It looks like you were also a professor, adjunct professor at Drexel University in my hometown of Philly. Please elaborate.
I did do that.
In my hometown of Philly. Please elaborate.
I did do that a few years ago. One of my old bosses, he is the program director at Drexel, and asked me if I come in and teach a course called The Business of Fashion. And it really was teaching students how to create their own fashion business. And I taught them a lot about how I did my business and what to do when you really want to think about becoming an entrepreneur, A, and B, owning a fashion brand, because they really are two very different things. And it is super competitive to try to create a fashion brand these days. There's just so much competition out there. But, it really comes down to, it's a business first and foremost. It doesn't matter if you're the most creative person in the world. It doesn't matter. It matters that you know how to run a business. And so the person in the world, it matters. It matters that you know how to run a business. And so I really focused on that. And it was a great experience for me, because it was really before I started speaking like I am now. And so it gave me some more experience really teaching and training, which is what I incorporate now when I'm doing workshops with companies and really training people on professional image and personal branding.
I really like what you talked about there, Tavia, because there are so many creative opportunities. And one of the things that very often gets overlooked in our passions around that is that you really can take that creativity and infuse it as a business, and it can still be very creative and fun. So that's great that you're teaching that and that you're on the forefront, because we need creativity and we need those individuals who can bring that creativity, whether it's and we want their staying power. And the way to have that staying power is to understand the business aspects of it.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to something that you were talking about, is knowing your target market, because your credibility needs to match that. So speaking specifically of tattoos, so I was raised in a very conservative, my father's a retired evangelical minister. You would never have a tattoo. Piercings were also a thing. And then, roll the clock forward several years later, and one of the most notable ministers in the US right now is Carl Lentz from Hillsong out of Australia. And the guy's tatted up. And it's so interesting, because something that, even 10 years, well, I guess it's probably been 10 years ago since he kind of came in. He's from the US. He studied at Hillsong, Australia, but then he came back to the US. And then he took New York City by storm. Who his audience can relate to him, because he wears the style, haircut, tats, everything that helps him connect to his audience. So I think also in using the idea of the financial planner, right? That the world, as we become more global, that opportunities are more available to a lot of people. So a gentleman who, in your example, had the dreads, the tats, and so forth, may not be able to walk into a highly polished, senior partners charging tooth hot, and that guy could have a place, right? So I think it's, if you're going to be that, then just give yourself the gift of also knowing that you're not meant to serve everyone, and you can bring that persona, you can feel fully enriched in that, and bring that persona into that audience, and recognize where your persona and your brand will resonate and where it won't, right?
Exactly. I think that's the thing, right? You're not trying to be like everybody else. You're trying to be who you are, and that's who you attract, or people like you that sync up with you and like the way you are. You have that likability factor with them. That's your ideal audience. Like I do the same thing, and I just say I'm not afraid to express who I am, because I'm not trying to attract everybody. I'm trying to attract my soulmate clients, not every type of. I probably could help every guy. I mean, I could, but I don't I probably could help every guy. I mean, I could, but I don't need to, I just need to help the people that line up with what my goals are, what aligns with me. I want to make a bigger impact. So do my clients, so
Right.
we're going to sync up on those different things. Right. So I think that matters, when you really just don't try to, appease everybody, just be yourself. And that's who you're going to attract. People
And
like
that's right. And that's the gift that you bring, and the power of what you do is you can help people identify, here's who I am. And it's not where I feel comfortable, Bob, because so interesting on the training that we were on today. One of the things I encouraged myself to do in 2021, and as we finish 2020, is to live out of the comfortable zone. But it's about, Tavia, it sounds like you have an ability to say, okay, who are you? What do you want to represent? Who do you want to be in front of? And is that aligned? And then let's just make sure that your image and your persona in every way matches up with that. So thank you so much for being, this person in the world who can help us feel aligned and congruent, because if the Work With Me podcast and Roost Advisors, who represents and sponsors this Work With Me podcast, really believes that that's where we are able to live from a place of purpose, peace, and do our best work, is when that alignment matches, our outward matches our inside expression.
Exactly.
So thank you. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. So Bob, let's go to the fun part of this interview, shall we? Not that we haven't been having fun.
We have been.
And we are with Tavia Sharp on the Work With Me podcast at workwithmepodcast.com, 1023 HD2 KKNH, where classic rock lives, and Tick Radio, Tick with a C. And after the broadcast, I should reach out to you, Tavia, because somebody, what do you look like? And I'm thinking all the good-looking celebrities. What, Brad Pitt? No, Alice Cooper with a hangover. So it's time maybe to get a new look going. But let's get you on the stranded island.
No, first of all, Bob, if nothing else, this was the most empowering, amazing podcast we've had so far, because you're at least, we're both of us are at least willing. Okay, I'm going to put myself in the ring too. We're both at least willing to start to have a conversation. So good on us.
Absolutely. So after this podcast, I'll get out of my sweats, put my real comfortable clothes on. But I'm going to put you in a stranded island, and you can only have one of the following. Let's start off, one food or cuisine. What would it be?
Ooh, a food or cuisine.
Correct.
I think I'll pick Mexican food.
One book to read.
The Alchemist.
One movie to watch.
That's a hard one. I like Chocolat.
One TV show or series.
Ugh. There's so many that I like. Let's go with Outlander.
And one musician or band to listen to the rest of your life.
A musician or band? Can I pick a genre?
Sure.
I'll do 80s music.
Fantastic.
We're so connected, Tavia. Love Chocolat, love Outlander. I'm 80s all the way.
That's right.
And Alchemist is one of our top picks whenever we ask that question. And Mexican food is number 2, pizza being number 1.
Correct.
Hi, Bob.
Good one.
That is right.
Yep.
Now, Tavia, where could people reach out to you if they need help as well or need advice?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find me on my website. It's styled, STYLED, Sharp, SHARP, social media links, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel as well. They can find me at Styled Sharp.
Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us and joining us in the Work With You podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Work With Me podcast with Bob Stei and Lorindy Ruse. Original score by Mark Ruse. The show has been edited and produced by Bob Stei. If you have a comment, would like to advertise, be a guest or an affiliate of the Work With Me podcast, email bob@ruseadvisors.com. Copyright 2020 Ruse Advisors.